The new DT Swiss 240 Hybrid is a pretty niche hub set for a small subset of riders, those that need an e-bike specific hub, love DT Swiss, and want to spend the money for a 240 quality hub to save around 50 grams over a 350 Hybrid. If that's you, or if you're interested in tearing one down and seeing how they work, then let's get into it. So they come in this rather lovely matte black color. It's a anodized finish, which is much more durable than the old painted finish that the old 240s and 350s used to come in. And they only have the one decal color, which is this blue. If you don't like blue, then these hubs are not for you. And we'll see more of the blue on the inside. It signifies that it's the hybrid, it's the oversized version of these. They are 32 hole only, which is rather interesting because often you'd see e-bike hubs coming in 36 hole, with the kind of common logic being that 36 is more than 32, so it's going to build into a more durable wheel. But modern spokes are definitely more durable than they used to be, especially the big oversized ones that go into these oversized flanges. And by having only 32 hole rather than 36 hole, the spacing between the individual spoke holes is smaller, and therefore it's less likely that the hub flange cracks. And that's why we're actually seeing a trend in e-bikes towards lower spoke counts rather than higher. The hubs come from DT Swiss in either a Shimano microspline or HG35 freehub body. Interestingly, there's no XD freehub body version that you can buy, but you can buy the microspline version and then put an XD freehub body on it. They also come in both 6-bolt and center-lock rotors, which is interesting. And like I said previously, these use the thicker 2.3 millimeter spokes. So most kind of normal spokes are 2 millimeters at the J-bend. The e-bike spokes that DT Swiss want you to use with these are 2.3 millimeters, and the actual J section itself is slightly wider as well. So these hubs will not work with a regular spoke. They have to use the DT Swiss e-bike spokes. So I sometimes gloss over the front hubs and just sort of say that all of them are the same. And with the 240, that's actually not true. These use a much nicer end cap style than the 350, which has those kind of friction fit retaining caps, which aren't very nice to use. And it's got its own little dedicated axle in there. This is kind of a weird setup. It uses a larger bearing, which is going to be heavier. And it has this axle which then it can creak over time, but it gives you a much nicer end cap system. So there's kind of a trade-off there. The bearings that are in the 240 Hybrid are a 15 by 28 by 7, and there's no option for a 20 millimeter through axle, which I find very, very interesting, because I would have thought that there'd be quite a bit of demand for like modern e-bike forks that are coming with a 20 millimeter boost end cap. I think this end cap system is nicer than the system that comes on the 350, but I don't think it's as nice as something that comes on like the Hope Pro 5 with those plug-in end caps that work with everything from 12 millimeter right up to 20 millimeter just by simply pulling and pushing new end caps on. So this is the only hub in the DT Swiss range that uses the EXP OS, OS meaning oversized technology. In the marketing material, DT make out like the whole EXP system is bigger and stronger, but it's actually only the hub side which is. The freehub body side is dimensionally the same as the regular EXP and Ratchet systems. So the freehub body size is dimensionally the same as the regular EXP. However, regular EXP is available in 36 and 54 tooth of engagements, and EXP oversized is only available in 30 tooth, so there is no interchangeability. The freehub bodies are interchangeable though with EXP and with Ratchet, but not with Ratchet LN. Back in the day, pretty much the entire DT Swiss range of hubs, from the 180, which was the lightest one, all the way through to the 540, which was a tandem hub, they all used interchangeable bits, and that made it really easy to sort of work on them and swap between the two things. That's definitely changed a lot, and it's a little bit of a kind of a weird matrix now, with Ratchet LN and Ratchet sharing some bits but not the other, Ratchet and EXP sharing some bits and not the other, and then EXP and EXP OS sharing some bits and not the other. So it's certainly not as easy as it used to be. If we pull the freehub body off, it comes off the same way as any other DT Swiss freehub body, just with friction. We'll see that the spring is identical to the EXP. The floating ratchet is not. This is the 30 tooth one. And the freehub body is the same. It's a steel material on the hybrid hubs, but it's the same interchangeable freehub body with Ratchet and with EXP. What DT Swiss called the spacer, this little spring retaining spacer that's on the inside here, is dimensionally the same as the EXP system one, which is red. This one has a different part number and it's blue. Blue is obviously to signify that it's a hub set. And they use the same high pressure grease as all the other DT Swiss hubs. It is important that you run them on that high pressure grease. I know it's like really, really expensive for a little bottle of grease, but it does do a much, much better job than any other greases that we've seen. And it really does protect the ratchets, which is the important part. All of the end caps are the same across all of the modern DT Swiss hubs. So that means that Ratchet LN, Ratchet, EXP, and EXP OS all use interchangeable end caps. However, there are 3 different SKUs, 3 different part numbers for each of the end caps because of the different surface finish on them. There is a gloss finish, a matte finish, and then a matte finish with the kind of little machine things that make them easier to get it on and off. Bit of a pain because the part numbers are all different and it's a little bit hard to find what you want, but it does mean that you can swap between all the different models. So to go a little bit deeper, we're going to remove the spacer that separates the hub from the freehub body. This again is different to the EXP system. The OS version is blue, and you'll see in a minute, but it's got a stepped axle, which this needs to clear. So this is not interchangeable with the EXP. Then we're presented with the seal and with the threaded EXP OS ratchet ring. The seal needs to come off. I've already removed this one because it's a real pain in the ass to do on camera. And you need to get a little screwdriver in there and pick it off. What that means is that you will damage the seal when you pull it off. Arguably, that's not a bad thing. This seal is the same part number that's used on the Ratchet and EXP hubs, and it's kind of responsible for most of the freehub body issues that we see with DT Swiss hubs. So if you've got some weird binding, some weird drag, the chain is derailing from the front derailleur, that sort of thing, then quite often it's because the spacer is damaged. So installing a new spacer every time is highly, highly recommended. And by pulling this one off and visibly damaging it, it means that you're going to need to put a new one on. The EXP oversized system uses a special tool to remove the threaded ratchet. This is not the same as the ratchet or as the EXP tool. It's specific to the EXP OS. And just like the other ones, the threaded ratchet is, as the word would let you think, threaded into the hub. What that means is that as you pedal, the threaded ratchet tightens up inside the hub. This is probably the worst point of all DT Swiss hubs. It's something which just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially on an e-bike hub where you've got the extra power of the e-bike motor. These threaded rings get really, really tight in the hub, and they're a real pain in the ass to get out sometimes. We've resorted to using rattle guns and like big breaker bars to try and get them out. They can be so tight that the actual hub itself becomes damaged when you need to remove them. This makes the modern DT Swiss hubs harder to service than any other hub that's on the market, even a Chris King, I believe. And you need to get this ratchet ring out to access the drive side bearing. So the drive side bearing is a 17 by 28 by 7. That's a larger than is used in a regular EXP hub, but it's smaller than the 15-28-7, which is used in the Ratchet and Ratchet LN hubs. A little bit strange for an e-bike hub. I would have thought they would have gone for a bigger bearing, but they haven't. They've actually gone for a smaller bearing here. That's on the drive side. On the non-drive side of the hub is a 15-26-7. So that again is smaller than the non-hybrid hubs, but similar to what's used in the 240 EXP hub. Why would they use smaller bearings? Well, basically because bearings are solid steel and therefore they're very heavy. So by using a smaller bearing, you're actually saving relatively a lot of weight on the hub. Again, a weird choice on an e-bike hub, but DT Swiss across the board has amazing bearing life. Like the bearings in them do last much longer than most other brands of hub. So they seem to know what they're doing. It's also one of the things that kind of lets them get away, I think, with having this threaded in ratchet ring or threaded in drive ring, which needs to be removed to access the drive side bearing. If the bearing life wasn't as good and you need to replace the bearings more frequently, then that would be much more of a pain in the ass than it is. So with the threaded ratchet, we can see the stepped axle. This will pop out now. As I said in our bird talon video, stepped axles are the trend of 2023. And what that means is we've got a 15mm diameter axle at the freehub body end and at the non-drive side bearing end. And the drive side bearing is on a 17mm diameter axle section. The reason for this is that the most likely place for an axle to break is on the inboard side of that drive side bearing. That's the highest load point in the hub. It's got this massive cantilever from the end there, and that's where an axle will almost certainly break. By using a larger diameter and then by moving it out and smoothing it off, making it rather than a sharp corner, a smooth corner, DT Swiss have really reduced the likelihood of axles breaking. And some brands of hub tend to be quite hard on their axles. For some reason, even though they've stuck with a 15mm for most of their range, DT hubs just don't break axles. There must be something unique about the material that they're using, which other companies aren't using. I've got to be honest, it's going to be hard to recommend this hub to a lot of riders. The oversized flanges need their own larger spokes, and the unique tool to service the EXP OS system won't be in everyone's toolbox. But against those trade-offs, we've got the really high quality machining and exceptional bearing life that DT Swiss is renowned for. If you're in the small subset of riders who are a DT Swiss fan, you're really hard on rear hubs, and you're needing the oversized spokes, then the 240 Hybrid will be a great option. If you're not in that niche, then the regular non-hybrid DT Swiss range or the Hope Pro 5 are also worth looking into. Any questions or comments? Ask away.